Welcome, everybody, to the Sko Show, your Colorado Buffaloes podcast from Mile High Sports. I'm Shawn Drotar. That is Matt Smith. This is, of course, presented by our friends at Peckish. More on them in a bit. But, Matt, obviously, after a disastrous loss, a loss that you can't even really wrap your head around in Utah, where everything went wrong, the Buffaloes now come back. They have an opportunity to play a game at Folsom. But if any aspirations to make a bowl are going to be realistic, you have to win this game. End of story.
End of story. End of story. And a bad loss pushes them over the edge. And I think we can start having other conversations, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I just think they've got a really good shot to win this week. That was the gauntlet stretch, the BYU, TCU, Iowa State, Utah. We talked about it before it. We talked about it during it. Those are 4 games against teams that you just don't match up with well. Yep. And now I think the back 4, they have a shot to win some of these games. So that's why I even put out a video during halftime on my social media, the Utah game in Salt Lake. I was like, yeah, they got their ass kicked. That it happens. Like sometimes life just kicks your ass and you got to get back up on the horse. Like that's just what it is. And I don't think there's too much, as far as this year is concerned, I don't think there's too much deeper we really have to read into it. They had been playing football that is good enough to at least compete down the stretch with these final 4 teams up until that game. And sometimes coming off a bye, they haven't been the best. And when you don't start well against Utah, they just sit on you. And that's what happened. And Kyle Whittingham out-coached, out-schemed, out-prepared, and Utah out-talented Colorado in many positions.
Yeah, the couple losses early in the year, the tight one to Georgia Tech at home. Obviously, Georgia Tech now a top 10 team. We know how good Haynes King is, and the loss to BYU and TCU. You had 14-point leads. It sort of maybe felt a little bit like fool's gold or a mirage. It's tough to kind of break down because the Buffs have had a lot of injuries. We'll get to theirs in a moment, but they had moments where you could imagine, okay, you maybe could have beaten Georgia Tech. It was right there. You had 2 touchdown leads over BYU and TCU. If you had won either one of those, you're still talking about being a good chance of being a bowl team. You win both of them, and maybe we're not having conversations about this is kind of a lost season, but here we are. This game's obviously the most important one for the majority of the Buffs, and you're 3-5. The game that's in front of you is the most important one. Injuries are a concern. Of course, there are participation lists when you're talking about some of the guys that are out. Hakeem Williams, Simeon Price, the running back's been out for a while. Xavier Hill is taking the most offensive snaps for them at guard. He's out. Makari Vickers at cornerback. Alexander McPherson at defensive line. Keep that in mind at defensive line, too. Doubtful, listed as Amari McNeil and Tafik Thomas. Your 2 defensive tackles, questionable. Cornerbacks, Tion Parks and R.J. Johnson. And then on wide receivers, Sincere Brown and Isaiah Harge. That is a lot of talent that's on the list. Arizona only has 1 player listed, but we talked about this before the show. This isn't the NFL. This isn't a thing where everyone's required to do it, and there are very specific characterizations that you have to put together on players. This is sort of a voluntary, we kind of put out what we want. It's something for you to chew on, but it doesn't have to mean anything.
Well, that's not necessarily true. It's required. You're supposed to do it. There's just no punishment or repercussion for it.
Right.
That's the problem. And so
and it's just the Big 12. This isn't a whole NCAA thing. It's just conference by conference.
Yeah, it's conference by conference, but the SEC and the Big 10 are doing it now as well. And clearly it's for gambling purposes. And some coaches are kind of giving the finger to everybody over that because they don't really like it, which I get. It's college football. Everything's supposed to be a secret for some reason, even though the NFL manages to do it every Sunday just fine, and nothing's a secret in the NFL anymore. And so I think that's one part of college football I think just takes itself way too seriously. But I believe in the future things will be changed because Arizona listing 1 player is really putting the finger up to that whole thing. That's a joke. We're week 10 here. You got some guys banged up. And by the letter of the law, Coach Prime knows that if he does not list a correct injury report, that's just more fodder in the cannon for people to shoot against him. And so he's got to play by the book. And that's why Colorado's is always near the top of the longest in the conference. That, and they've had some bad injury luck, I would say, this year as well. Losing Xavier Hill, their left guard for this week, who was all conference, all ACC out of Memphis last year, that blows. That blows. That's a really tough one because he has been part of that anchor on the left side with Jordan Seaton. Now, against Arizona, am I as concerned about it as I would have been against Utah? Absolutely not. But it is the first time this year that they will have changed or had a different starter at any other position than right tackle. And there was only one guy who started a game at right tackle who wasn't their opening day starter. So yeah, that's obviously a concern. You don't like to see that because he's one of your better players. Maybe the only draft eligible guy they have on the team this year, quite frankly, or guy that not draft eligible is the wrong word, but draft probable,
Yeah, there you go.
or
Yeah,
draft potential.
likely to be picked.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
So we'll see. Obviously, it doesn't look great, and they've been banged up quite a bit, but that's what they're going to have to deal with, and they've been dealing with it now for basically the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I think they're pretty used to it at this point.
And you can make the argument, quite frankly, it hasn't been dealt with all that well. When you look at their ranks in the FBS in passing, in running, in scoring, and overall, the highest they're ranked in any of those is 97th. So, I mean, obviously for the Buffs, offense has basically been a disaster this year. It hasn't been able to consistently find an identity. And now you're going into a game in which the expectation for the opposing coach, Brennan, is that he's going to be facing two different quarterbacks, Kaidon Salter and Ryan Staub. You'll notice that we're not talking about Julian Lewis, which I think coming in to this homecoming game on national TV after that long stretch of games, the gauntlet, as you put it, that the Buffs did not handle that well. I think that was what a lot of fans had hoped for. They're probably not going to get that, but in Salter and Staub, it is so hard to develop any sort of offensive identity when you're switching out quarterbacks that have completely different skill sets. But I will say at the same time, in their defense for the Buffs, I don't know what else you could do. I mean, you are throwing everything at the wall right now to make it stick when you are barely cracking the top 100 in any offensive category.
Yeah, again, we talked about this a little while ago. I believe the Iowa State win bought him a couple of games, at least bought him through Arizona, because mathematically bowl eligibility still very much is in play. And Salter does give you the best chance to win still. And people are going to be like, what are you talking about? You've got a 5-star. It's like, well, I'll tell you this. From everything I've heard, if he were ready, he'd be out there, but he's just not ready because he's not handling business in some important areas. Now, that could change by next week,
right?
If Salter doesn't find a way to win this game. Because I think if you fall to 3-6, you're looking at your final 3 games of the year. It's a free 3 games for Julian Lewis while preserving his red shirt. I don't care if he's not ready. Throw him to the Wolves and make him realize how unprepared, if you feel that's the case, that he is. Because really, at that point, the season's done. It doesn't really matter anymore. You have to win this one. The psyche of this team will be not great if they don't win this one. It's like teetering as it is right now. I will say they have put Utah behind them, which is good because I do think it is an outlier on the season. That wasn't indicative of who they are. However, it's indicative of how far away from what they want to be that they are. Right. I mean, like there's a chasm between Colorado and Utah as far as their program's sustainability and efficiency overall. So yeah, it's one of those things where I'm not all that surprised, nor would I think that it's the right decision to put Julian Lewis in there now. I know fans are impatient and they want to see the 5-star, and if you're going to lose, you might as well do it with that young man, but you have to protect him as well, and you have to do what's in his best interest as well. And if he wants to redshirt, I wouldn't blame him. That was kind of what this year was about for me anyway. It was that burn year. He's, should still be a first semester high school senior, right? Prom is still months away. At least it should be for Julian Lewis. So not surprised. However, if Kaidon can't get it done this week, I think that's the last we see of him under center for Colorado.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is the idea that when you're grasping at straws and you're trying to get multiple quarterbacks in, if the Buffs thought Julian Lewis was ready, of course he'd be in there. That's a better choice than having to grab guys that you're thinking of subbing out. So, I mean, obviously that's the case. The Sko Show is brought to you by our friends at Peckish. If you are up in Boulder regularly, you already know Peckish, all the wings and the pizza out on the hill, and you have an opportunity to go check out their new place, just a couple steps down. The reason it's just moved a bit is because it's 3 times larger. So you get a better spot there to catch all of it. Great place to watch sports, more room, more TVs, but all of the same wings and pizza that you expect out of Peckish. And if you haven't been in Boulder lately, or you're watching the Buffs from afar, you're one of these forever Buffs that you can't get there. You're just not up in Boulder very often, but you are down to the Denver Tech Center, well, you can enjoy Peckish too. Preferred dining partner of CU Athletics. You can have everything that they put together down at the Tech Center, I-25 and Bellevue, just a little bit west of I-25 in the Bellevue station. Delicious. They have this amazing pizza oven there. The crust is their own design. It wasn't taken from anybody else. And of course, they have all the wings, whether you get them bone in or boneless, or you toss some tenders and wings, every single one of them. A lot of places do a lot of different sauces, but what they just taste like is hot, right? I mean, we all get that. But at Peckish, one of the things that I love about it is there's heat, but there's flavor. Whether you're getting the liquid lava or whether you're going with something a little more sort of like a honey garlic, all of it, you're really going to get that taste. Yeah, I know I enjoy going there myself. And when you're down in that Tech Center area, you can check it out for lunch. Lunch special starting at $10. You can get the pizza by the slice and happy hours every weekday as well. So make sure you check it out. Check out peckishco.com for more. Matt, we talk about the struggles with the offense. It's worth noting, of course, that Arizona's defense is ranked 17th in the country in overall defense. They're not even allowing 300 yards per game. Some of that, I think, is a bit of a mirage, but the truth of the matter is the two games they lost of late, BYU and Houston, two teams that CU lost to, they played them pretty tight. I mean, this Arizona team with a couple breaks could conceivably be 6-1. They aren't Utah, but they aren't bad.
No, they're not bad. And they're another good test for Colorado. In a lot of ways, I think they're similar to what CU has been able to do. I think they have a better quarterback, and that has changed some things for them. They played Houston way better than Colorado did.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it was Ryan Staub. That, Houston is playing hard this year. 7-1. Like, that's an impressive job that Willie Fritz has done, because there's just not that much to that team. They're just rock solid fundamentally. So you just got to tip your hat to those guys. But yes, this Arizona team, they do a lot on the edges. I expect them to try and force Colorado's corners to tackle in space. We've seen a lot of teams try to do that with Colorado's secondary, and it has not gone well for the Buffs whatsoever this year. They got a couple of shifty backs, and defensively, they're always known for those long, rangy corners. They've typically got a good linebacker or two. It is the case again this year, and I think this is a team that's just playing better football cohesively than Colorado is. But I think overall the talent level on Colorado's sideline is a little bit higher, even despite some of those injuries. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, Noah Fafita has come into Boulder and beat Colorado before. He did it his freshman year in 2023. So he had a bit of a down year, but it was the first year with Brent Brennan and the changeover of the staff. When we went down to Arizona last year in Tucson, Colorado beat the brakes off them. They did. I mean, it started with a surprise opening kick, a surprise onside kick, and we were all like, what? Why would you ever do that? You're already shorthanded against Shador and Travis, and you just gave up, 7 basically right off the hop, and, it was never competitive. In fact, that was the first time against a Power 4 opponent that I can remember Colorado having a legitimate carefree second half.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But Fafita is a good quarterback. He's accurate. He's about to set basically every Arizona passing record. In that loss to Houston, the last game they played a couple of weeks ago, they lost that game close, 31-28. Fafita was 24 for 26 with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 92% completion, folks. I mean, that's impressive. When you look at CU, when you look at their defense, they are 52nd against the pass. But that is misleading.
Yes.
Because they are 134th, folks, against the run, coughing up 217 yards per game on the ground. And they've given a lot of that up this year to quarterbacks. Certainly guys like Haynes King of Georgia Tech who can run. But, I mean, my goodness, Nick Minicucci gave them a hard time on the ground. Connor Wiegman had his career high in yardage at halftime of the Houston game. The Buffs are vulnerable. And you've noted that Fafita, even though he is not a runner, has been a little more aggressive of late.
I don't know if vulnerable, it may be the understatement of the century, right? Like, they're atrocious. Abysmal. Yeah. I mean, they're susceptible, to the nth degree against running quarterbacks. But yeah, I mean, Fafita can get around and move around a little bit. The one thing that is impressive is Arizona was able to keep it as tight as they were with Houston, despite a lot of pressure. Fafita got sacked at least 5 times in that game, if memory serves, and they were all over him when I went back and watched it.
Yeah,
so
16 times on the year, which is in the lower 30, 28th worst in college football. So Fafita has been getting hit.
Yeah, he has been getting hit, but he's been grinding. He's one of those guys. He's a tough little football player. So They're very aware of him. Coach Prime called him a pro this week. I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think he's a pro, maybe in the CFL, but not in the NFL.
No, I don't think so.
So we'll see how it plays out. But I would say evenly matched teams. Now remember, Arizona is coming off a bye, and they got to sit on their couch and watch as much of that last week as they could stomach.
Right.
I'm thinking overconfidence could be in play for Arizona,
Yeah.
or at least coming in expecting to drub these guys. Now, Colorado, I heard Coach Prime today on the Coach Show say that he feels very good about the game plan this week himself. I mean, it was so bad last week that I would hope that you'd feel that you'd have
worse.
some sort of positive. And he denied that. He said they were prepared. It was execution. I don't agree. And we're going to find out if it's better this week. They had a lot to clean up in just a couple of days.
Yeah. Well, with Salter in there, at least the ability to run might be valuable. In the last 2 weeks last 2 games, I should say, for Arizona, they've coughed up almost 200 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns to quarterbacks, and not all of them. That included Houston, Connor Weigman, who we know wasn't really a runner until he faced the Buffaloes. But this does mean there's an opportunity, I would think, for Kaidon Salter to get things going. And when he has been able to run, especially early, a couple of play calls to get him cracking and the early going, he's been able to be more free, more loose. He's been more effective. It seems like his confidence goes up when he's able to move the ball with his feet a little bit. And then, quite frankly, after that threat's been announced, he becomes a better passer. So this game plan, when you think about how you approach this team, if they do come in a little overconfident, and I agree, I think that's a possibility. How do you make sure you punch him in the mouth right off the bat and change the dynamic of the game?
Start like you did against BYU and TCU. Come out fast, both sides of the football. Get them off the field. I mean, that is what they could not do to Utah on a couple of those drives. Ironically, they did. It was just they were getting hammered time after time after time, and they got Utah off the field a couple of times. Even despite allowing 43 points, it was just not nearly enough. Yeah. And their offense couldn't string drives together.
53 points. You might have blacked out for the last 10, like most of us did.
Yeah. And I think you said it right, setting up the pass with the run, the quarterback run this week, because Weigman hit him hard last week. Yeah. I will say Weigman, after not being that type of a quarterback,
he can move.
This year, he's put up some pretty good rushing numbers, and he's got that team in good position. So I think there are some opportunities for Salter. I think it's going to be about getting him on the move because, look, if Colorado is going to win this game, I think it's going to be because they got back to running the football, not because they beat Arizona in some sort of shootout. I think that's the recipe for success this year we've seen. I would love to see 15 to 20 carries this week for Dallin Hayden. Not sure we've seen a running back get 15 yet in the Coach Prime era in one game. So would like to see what that looks like, quite frankly. They've been going to Cam Michael, who's a converted, he played a little running back in high school, but he did a little bit of everything. He was, I think, the number 2 overall rated athlete coming out of that 2024 class. So he had a pedigree, but he's been banged up while he's been on campus. Missed basically all of last year, was hurt in camp this year, and is starting to come on. But I think he's more of your change of pace guy, not your starter. And I don't think they get that, is what it is. Maybe Hayden's showing them something that they don't like to see, but he's been their hardest runner all year. They just haven't given him the opportunity.
Yeah, it's been very strange to see what they're doing at the running back position. I've had my beefs with Pat Shermer before in his play calling, both at the collegiate and pro level. I don't quite understand this, but I will also say that one of the challenges is it greatly appears evident that the Buffs overvalued their incoming players. They overvalued their transfer portal players. They overvalued the players they recruited. They thought they were going to be more impactful. And maybe this is one of the adjustments the Buffs have to have. It's great to go get the top athletes. That's great. And obviously, but that presumes you're going to coach them into find the position that fits them best, coach them into it, make sure they get better. That part has been a problem. It's felt as times as if the Buffs have been trying to just collect athletes, just put them on the field and assume it's going to work. Because we started the program here, there really hasn't been an identity, offensively or defensively. But one of the things you brought up, find a way to keep Arizona off the field. To me, that's the way that you make sure you take advantage of home field and maybe pit this game. And the stats kind of back it up. Arizona on third downs, 37%, 99th in FBS. They haven't been good on third downs. The Buffs, oddly, 40th in the country at stopping third down. So actually the best part of their defense, when you look at the ranks across FBS, is the fact that they have limited third down conversions of their opponents. When you kind of go through the games, I don't know if there's anything they necessarily do on third down to tighten things up, but it has been relatively effective. I do have my concerns about Fafita, who's accurate, but at the same time, we watched this Buffs defense limit Bear Backmeyer of BYU. They limited that they also have limited Rocco Becht in that Iowa State game you talked about. They have had games in which they've stepped up against good quarterbacks. The problem is finding out what the pattern is, because so far this year, I have to admit, Matt, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of rhyme or reason. You kind of watch the Buffs for a night. You just kind of hope that what you're watching is a good version. There's no real way, it seems like, to predict it. It's been a jack in the box all year.
Yeah, you said it well. Defensively, I think that opponent third down conversion percentage statistic is a little misleading, because I think there's been plenty of drives where their opponents just haven't been getting a third down. So I think there's part of that. And the other part of it is their defense has been effective at times, right? I look more as far as the offense goes and their third downs. That I think is more important this week. You have to stay out of third and long. That's when they're at their worst. They've got to, because they didn't win on first and second down in Utah. You've got to find a way, when that goes back to running the football. But yeah, defensively, Jeremiah Brown has stepped up for them the last couple of games to the point where I'd call him their best linebacker, at least their best performance any linebacker has given through 3 weeks. French might be the worst person still, or the worst player still receiving regular snaps. Hughes isn't much better, but they don't have a choice. They're in love with those guys' athleticism sideline to sideline. I heard Coach Prime say again today, and I actually yelled at the screen, but they haven't made a damn play at the sideline all year. What are you talking about? It was just one of those things where I was like, stop. It's just, we all have eyeballs too. And, I'm a little sick of this world, having people tell you that things aren't real, that your eyes are telling you are, Sean. So, it's just it's a trigger subject for me.
Yeah. And it's tough because you're right. I think what we've seen is the Buffs love the athletes. They aren't necessarily getting the football players.
No.
And the question is, how much of that is the talent they're bringing in, and how much of that is the coaching? The idea Coach Prime has talked about, the idea with this coaching staff is we have a lot of NFL experience because the goal is to get you playing on NFL Sundays. But when you're not seeing that kind of improvement from those players, and I do get in their defense, this isn't college football as it used to be. Everything has to be microwaved. You're bringing in new people every single year. The rosters feel new. It's like NFL free agency on steroids. Everybody's a free agent every year. And so the idea of team culture, team chemistry, some of the things that Coach Prime has consistently said he wanted to build, I don't know how feasible that is in today's college football. And I think that's one of the things that's tripped this team up this season.
Yeah, again, everything changed last offseason. If the rules from 2023 and 2024 were still in place, they'd be fine. But because it became literally all about the money, and people are going to be like, oh, no, there's still some kids that make choices for who they are. Okay, but they're they're not a dime a dozen. Like you got to go through lengths to find these guys, and you're not going to find many old school kids. All they're looking for is the bottom line and the check. It doesn't matter if I'm getting offered from Ohio State or LSU. Who's going to pay me more? Great, I'm going there. I get it. I mean, that's the way the world works, is it not? Like, there's very few people in life that make decisions based upon quality of life and not overall financial stability. I mean, that's just the truth. I got offered a job in Houston last year, and I was like, I'm never living in Texas, ever. I don't care how much money they pay me.
That is a quality of life choice, though.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm a rare bird.
You're old school.
A lot of people would have been like, oh, top 5 market, I'm gone. I was like, no, I don't know. And after going to Houston a couple of weeks ago, thrilled with my decision. So anyway, I just, rant over. The point was, yeah, Sean, it's a weird spot they're in right now until they can raise some more money. I wouldn't be writing as big of checks with what I said.
Yeah, we'll see what the Buffs do. Obviously, for any sort of bowl eligibility, this is a must-win game. It has to be. And as Matt laid out earlier, it's probably after this game, if it is a loss, it's probably time to turn to Julian Lewis, ready or not, just because you've got to find out what you've got there coming into another off season of absolute madness in college football. But hopefully they find a way to get this win. I'm intrigued by it. Arizona's slight favorite, 4.5, 5.5 points, depending on where you look. That sounds about right, especially coming after the Buffs loss and knowing that the Wildcats are rested. But I agree with you. I actually think overall talent, top to bottom, the Buffs are slightly better. They are not as cohesive a unit. They are not probably when you're talking about the X's and O's, probably not as good a unit as Arizona's, and that's one of the challenges. But they can come home and win this, and then kind of keep the bowl eligibility stuff alive for another week. I've talked about it all year. There's a short-term battle and there's the long-term battle. Getting to a bowl is really important because it sets up the long-term possibilities. But if you start falling off a cliff and this thing starts to go really south, and everyone in Vegas who was looking at an over under of 5.5 and saying, wow, they're really shorting the Buffs, you don't want them to go like, nope, they were way too bullish on the Buffs. It changes the dynamic coming into the offseason. So this is a critical game for the Buffs. We'll see what they will do. It's going to be just absolutely fascinating. The most important game for the Colorado Buffaloes since Deion Sanders took over as head coach. I want to thank our friends at Peckish once more. 2 locations on the Hill in Boulder and, of course, in the Denver Tech Center on I-25 Bellevue and Bellevue Station. Preferred dining partner of CU Athletics. We know the Coach Prime's been there. Shadur, Travis, you know the guys, because who doesn't like wings and pizza with your football? I don't know too many people. It's a pretty good setup. So make sure you check it out wherever you're at, peckishco.com. Delighted to have them as the sponsors of this program. Matt, last thoughts from you on this game. I'm with you. I'm not going to say it's going to be a win. I try not to do that on this program, but I think they have a good chance to do it. And I think if they don't do it, given this situation, as important as it is, then next week on this program, I have some pretty tough questions we have to start asking.
Agreed. I'm picking a win here. I am. I think they'll bounce back. And, that wasn't indicative of who they were. And every time you get your butt kicked like that, unless it splinters a locker room, you want to come back out and show that's not who you were. And they haven't broken apart yet. So until we see that, I'm not going to believe that it's splintered. And I expect them to go out and beat Arizona this weekend. That's the standard that Coach Prime is setting this program. And if you fall short, to your point, that's when the conversation opens up and we can start to talk about a lot of different things.
Yeah. Matt, thanks so much. Always good to have you. Appreciate it. Make sure you check out Matt's stuff as well. Give him a follow and check out the content he puts together, podcast work on YouTube. He talked about the video at halftime. So is tuned in with the Buffs. One of my favorite people to talk to about it. Always great to talk to you, my friend. Thanks a lot.
You too, buddy.
All right. Well, all there's left to do is to play the game. So thanks for catching the Sko Show from all of us for here. Well, there's only one more thing to say. Sko Buffs.